And tonight on The Wrap, a federal appeals court in New York says the NSA spying program that collected millions of American phone records was not authorized in the Patriot Act. Hillary Clinton is a favorite among millionaires, but maybe losing New Hampshire, huh? Also, are religious colleges about to lose their tax-exempt status? And what qualities are Americans looking for in a president? The results may surprise you. We've got all that, plus potluck and yay or nay. This is The Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by Associate Editor at HotAir.com, Noah Rothman. New to the show, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. To his right, Newsmax contributor and editor of the WisdomDaily.com, Brad Hirschfield in the Heather Hansen seat.
I am.
And filling it quite well.
Well, we'll have to talk about that with Heather. She might not be so happy about that.
Well, good point. And finally, he is a former Navy SEAL and founder of U.S. Continued Services. Jonathan Gilliam joins us. Jonathan.
And I'd like to think I'm filling Rick Unger's seat today.
Yes. It's quite easy to do, quite frankly. Lots happening tonight. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And we begin with the federal appeals court ruling that's reunited the debate over the NSA's spying program. The three-judge panel here in New York says the program that collects millions of American phone records goes too far and was not authorized in the Patriot Act. Former government security contractor Edward Snowden exposed the program. Given the national security concerns, the judges didn't stop the program, but say Congress needs to decide what surveillance is permissible. Attorney General Loretta Lynch told a Senate panel today that the NSA surveillance is a vital tool in the national security arsenal, and says the administration is reviewing the ruling.
Given the time issues involving the expiration of it, we are also and have been working with this body and others to look for ways to reauthorize Section 215 in a way that does preserve its efficacy and protect privacy.
Now enacted after the September 11 terror attacks, the Patriot Act gives the government broad tools to investigate terrorism. And Senator John McCain, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, tells Fox News that it's critical the program continue.
I'm very worried about it because I think we have to have the ability to monitor communications. It's pretty clear that 9/11 could have been prevented if we had known about some of the communications that went to those who committed this terrible atrocity of 9/11. We have to understand this threat, and people seem to have forgotten 9/11.
Senator McCain says it's still possible to safeguard privacy while giving law enforcement the information it needs to prevent terror attacks. And speaking on the Steve Malzberg Show here on Newsmax TV, former CIA and NSA Director Michael Hayden also argued the program should continue.
You know, when I'm in front of audiences and they complain about the Patriot Act, I say, well, would you give me an example, please, of what civil liberty you've lost because of the Patriot Act? And generally, a long silence follows. This has not been abused, and this has been useful for people to keep us safe. And Steve, after what happened in Texas last Sunday, the homegrown guys with these very limited relationships with ISIS, this may not be the time for our giving up approaches that allow us to connect the dots between foreign and domestic terrorism.
But the ACLU saying today the mass surveillance program does not make us any safer. Critics of the NSA spy program don't fall neatly along party lines, they say. Today, 2016 hopefuls Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders both applauded the appeals court ruling. Jonathan Gilliam, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think, you know, here the biggest problem that you have here is that it's hard to measure results, right? This could have been amazing, or had amazing results, but what happens is when you're not truthful in the way that you're actually doing these things, and we know that when Edward Snowden came out and the things that he said, that they've played with the rules and able to collect more information. The reality is just the basic information that they're collecting on our phone records are there to create a spider web that when somebody does something, they can go back and research who they've been in contact with. But the way the NSA has played with this has now caused them to have this type of a backlash. And the problem is that the ACLU and the proponents that say, hey, you need to get rid of it, they're not fully looking at what it does that is good. And I think when you have, Rand Paul coming out and saying that this is a decision that is good for all those who love liberty, listen, I love liberty, but I also know what it takes to keep liberty. And I think that's where there's a disconnect in all these arguments.
So you believe in the program, just not the execution of it.
That's correct.
Brad.
Yeah, I think there's room for the program to continue. The court did not say this is illegal, contrary to what Paul may be celebrating and Sanders may be celebrating. What they said was the Bush administration's extension of certain clauses of the Patriot Act does not allow the kind of metadata gathering the NSA is doing. And I don't think that the ACLU is necessarily the best resource for determining the security effectiveness of any of these measures. I get it. We do have less privacy in a whole variety of ways right now in this country. If there's any one of them that seems to me worth keeping that loss of privacy over, is stuff that could keep us alive.
No, the irony is that younger people like us don't make phone calls anymore, right? And Jonathan and Brad, of course. Like younger people like us, the whole panel, that's what I meant.
That's good cover.
We don't make phone calls anymore. We're texting constantly. Who talks on the phone? All right, I'm sending emails. I contacted you today. We went back and forth with IM. No one calls anymore. In other words, I think Americans are kind of apathetic about this because they're like, go ahead, listen to my phone calls. I don't even make them anyway.
That's a good point. It's possible. There was also the PRISM program, which was a data collection and warehousing, a metadata collection and warehousing program, which would have snapped up some of that information as well. I'm on the fence about whether or not the efficacy of this program is really at issue. I think that a lot of people would agree and concede that there's effectiveness to this, but that's also a problem insofar as it does kind of violates what we understand to be the principles that where the Patriot Act was passed. As you said, the court didn't say this was illegal. They said that you have to pass another law in order to make this this legal. And
so the
that's
program
where
continues as of now.
Well, that's where the political problem is. If Republicans want to argue this, they have to have a real debate over whether we need this program. And I think that's going to be a problematic debate to have.
It's very problematic because when they debate it, it's typically based on what their interests are and not really what the facts are about the whole program.
Right. It's exactly why we should have the debate, and I actually believe if we had that debate, we will end up restoring the fullness of this program. I don't know that for a fact, but I think it's precisely because when people start to, it's liberty versus not liberty. That's my concern, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Rand Paul. Don't tell me it's liberty versus non-liberty, right? Because the people across the board believe in liberty. The question is, how do we metabolize the real setbacks we take on certain matters of personal privacy when we are at war? That's a real question. I'm not telling you I know exactly where the bright line on it is, but I think anyone right now who posits this is an issue of liberty versus not commitment to liberty, that's not fair.
It would be interesting if Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul won their respective nominations, and then they debate each other and you just agree on everything. that would be remarkable.
That's a picture of something.
Jonathan, John McCain said that if the Patriot Act were in place before 9/11, that 9/11 could have been prevented. Would you go that far?
Well, we don't know exactly what could have prevented 9/11 except for better standards and practices. We know for a fact that would have changed things. I mean, the chances are, the way we started collecting data and information after 9/11 really has changed tremendously, and it's given us a greater footprint in countries where we don't actually have people. It actually has shown us a better overview of the puzzle that we're trying to put together, which before 9/11 we just didn't have that. So I think he's correct in saying that, but how much it's going to prevent in the future that's something that's very hard to measure. It's easy to go back and look at something. It's very difficult to look forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hindsight is 20/20, but I do think it's worth bearing in mind the most effective use of social media in the world today is by Islamic terror organizations. It seems to me, at the very least, we better think about how to be somewhat sophisticated about countermeasures against an enemy that's that effective using mass media. And that's going to involve mass.
Offense is always easier than defense, and that's the problem.
Right. Get ahead of the problem, don't solve the problem.
That seems to be a big deal in play right now, is that ISIS is using Twitter to announce to its followers, go attack, right? What happened in Texas was more inspirational than operational.
Right, which is even more disturbing than that there being actual operational links between these individuals and ISIS Central in Iraq or Syria. Right. We just don't know how to counter that. And after the fact, we can piece together the puzzle, but it's hard to justify that now.
In the old days, it was you had to get a courier, and then you had to hand it off to another courier. Now it's just send out a tweet, and you're done. Coming up next, Hillary Clinton gains popularity with millionaires, but may be losing in New Hampshire. More in a moment. And welcome back to the show. I'm Joe Concha, joined by Noah Rothman, Brad Hirschfield, and Jonathan Gilliam. Hillary Clinton is the early 16 choice, 2016 that is, of, can you guess? Millionaires. Yes, Clinton, who's making income inequality a key component of her campaign, is leading CNBC's Millionaire Survey. Of those with a net worth of over $1 million or more, 53% say they would cast their vote for Hillary, compared to 47% for a generic Republican hopeful. And when specific Republicans are named, Clinton is still the clear favorite, leading Jeb Bush by 16% and Chris Christie by like 90 or something. Okay, it's only 30. And speaking of millionaires, liberal website Mother Jones says the Clinton campaign has yet to say who its big-time cash bundlers are. On the campaign trail, Clinton has called for more transparency and an overhaul of the campaign finance system. Not a joke. In announcing his challenge to Clinton, Vermont Senator and self-described socialist Bernie Sanders decried the role of money in our elections.
We now have a political situation where billionaires are literally able to buy elections and candidates. Let's not kid ourselves. That is the reality right now. So you got the Koch brothers and other billionaire families now prepared to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in elections to buy the candidates of their choice, often extreme right-wing candidates.
Meanwhile, we have a very interesting poll to show you out of New Hampshire. Dartmouth College poll finds Mrs. Clinton trailing both Scott Walker and Jeb Bush in a hypothetical matchup. We say hypothetical because Walker and Bush have yet to officially announce their intentions. It's like Dunkin' Donuts, where the now serving sign has to come up, I guess, with the Republican side. In other head-to-head matchups, the poll finds Clinton tied with Marco Rubio and ahead of Chris Christie, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz. Curiously, John Kasich not in that poll. So, losing New Hampshire to Republicans, beloved by millionaires, probably funded by some, but we may never know. Why the secrecy? So let's discuss this for a little bit. A, Noah, are you surprised by that poll? And B, are you surprised that she's the number one choice of millionaires?
Very surprised by that poll, not even remotely surprised by the millionaires situation. She's running perhaps the most disingenuous campaign that's ever been run, to the point that a lot of people don't even seem to bother not acknowledging that. We had people who are working on Wall Street who are giving on-the-record quotes to CNN some time ago, saying that they're really happy that Hillary Clinton is likely going to be the president's successor. She's going to be their woman in the White House, and that she has to run this inequality campaign just to sate the extreme left-wing fringes.
But when she gets in, she'll thank her buddies in
Of
Wall
course,
Street.
oh yeah, a former senator from New York is going to be friendly to Wall Street. That shouldn't be ringing any bells, and yet we have to all pretend that we have to dance this dance that Hillary Clinton is the champion of inequality. As the Democratic Party has moved left, she has to move left with it, but it is all so disingenuous. As for the Dartmouth poll, that is rather shocking. That's a real bellwether state.
Absolutely, and that's where she won actually against Barack Obama in 2008 in New Hampshire. That was supposed to spur the comeback that never happened. Brad, let me ask you a question about Hillary's itinerary today. What billionaire's house was she at again?
Oh, she was at Chaim Saban's home, I think, who is a longtime friend of the Clintons, and because I'll probably make some enemies here, I don't think billionaires are inherently evil. I don't think that Wall Street is the evil empire or the axis of evil. I do think what's significant about all this is it allows people to step back and go, oh, right, it's not entirely clear that the Republican Party is the party of the wealthy and the Democratic Party is the party of the less than wealthy. The truth is they both have populist wings, they both have lots of money behind them, and I actually think it would be really healthy in this election if we could stop casting one as they're the wealthy big shots and those are the poor downtrodden, and really just look at what they stand for, what they want to do, and how they're going to get it done.
Jonathan, it's now been 26 days since Hillary Clinton announced her candidacy, and she's answered exactly 7 questions. Carly Fiorina in one day answered 50. I think Breitbart compiled that together. Doesn't want to face the press in any capacity, to the point where the New York Times actually had to write a column today about questions they would ask her if they possibly could. So, I'll allow you to play journalist for a moment. If you could ask Hillary Clinton one question, what would it be?
Definitely where she gets her pantsuits. No, I would actually ask her if she was in charge of disciplining people at the State Department for doing things outside of the policy when they have a top secret clearance and they're read into a national security program that if the information is divulged from that program could injure the country, what would she do to discipline that person? Would she carry out the mandated investigations that should have been put underway on her, or would she just ignore the fact that that they may have gone outside of policy and procedure? But I just want to say this about that poll. This is where we have to be careful with polls. I looked that up. 750 people were polled. There are 10 million millionaires in this country. So that is such a small percentage that if they went on the Upper East Side in New York, it's going to be so skewed as to who they're choosing. You know what I'm saying? These
Won't
polls.
be Mike Huckabee.
These polls tell us very little, I think, but they skew a whole lot. So people can see this and then they say, well, the millionaires must know they're successful. We better agree with them. Whereas I don't think that it really tells us a lot about the overall viewpoint of millionaires.
Brad, your one question?
Yeah, I would tell her, okay, Hillary, we freeze time. You won't have to pay the price for answering it. What's the single biggest professional political regret you have?
What do you think the answer would be?
I have no idea, because I don't think she's able to talk about regret that way. That's what I'd like to smoke out. She lives in her own self-referential world, and there are things about her I really like and admire.
It's called psychopath.
But no, I didn't say that. I'm not the diagnostician. You want to go there, doc, you do that. But there is this sense of smug entitlement, and I do have a lot of respect for it in some ways that I can't get past. It's really hard.
Noah?
You have said that you now oppose DOMA, you oppose the 1994 crime bill, you oppose welfare reform. Do you believe that your husband's presidency set the Democratic Party back?
It's a very good question. Too bad we'll never actually hear you ask it. Advocates, by the way, say that she needs to raise big money so she can get into office, so she can put an end to raising big money in campaigns. Just want to show both sides of the story there, and that's our Hillary block. Coming up next, are religious colleges about to lose their tax-exempt status? We'll let you know after the break. Do not go anywhere. And welcome back to The Wrap. Well, religious rights advocates are sounding the alarm about the impact of the Supreme Court's decision on same-sex marriage, due out sometime next month. If the High Court rules gay marriage should be the law of the land, it could have an impact on the tax-exempt status of religious universities. During last week's oral arguments before the Supreme Court, Justice Samuel Alito asked the Obama administration if a religious college would lose its tax-exempt status if it refused, for example, to provide housing to same-sex couples. The Solicitor General did not directly answer that question, but acknowledged that it could be an issue. Religious rights advocates are also concerned legalizing same-sex marriage nationwide could also have an impact on faith-based charities as well. So Brad Hirschfield, should the Supreme Court's decision on same-sex marriage have any effect on the tax-exempt status of
Maybe.
universities?
Here's the thing. Emotionally, I quickly want to say no, it shouldn't. Because it would be a weird thing to find ourselves in a moment of intolerance toward religious people in the name of tolerance. And I think you have to be very, very careful about that. Oftentimes people arrogate to themselves the privilege of, well, we're the tolerant ones, you're the morons, so we don't have to have any respect for you. And that does really disturb me. But now let's go back real quickly and remember that Alito's question about marriage and same-sex marriage and married coupled housing goes back to Bob Jones University. The Supreme Court actually stripped Bob Jones University of its tax-exempt status because they had a policy against interracial dating and interracial marriage. And I read some comments today by a guy I respect a great deal, R. Albert Mohler. He's the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Serious Christian, serious scholar, very much opposed to same-sex marriage. Listen to his words. The policy of Bob Jones University remains a moral blight to this day, even though the university has since rescinded the policy. So here's the thing. If that which was once fought against in the name of people's faith turns out some years later to be considered a moral blight by many of those same people, at the very least, we should be aware the court may be stepping in to help religious groups avoid another version of moral blight that they will come to regret down the road.
How is this similar to Memories Pizza and what we saw in Indiana as far as not baking a cake for a gay wedding, for instance, or a pizza place having, and again, I don't know who has pizza at a wedding. I think it's a
You're
phenomenal
still upset
idea.
about the pizza at the wedding.
No, I love it actually, that we don't do it enough. but still, I understood the argument from both sides completely, and I understand the argument here to a certain extent as well.
And I think that's the key. I think there is a difference. Forcing people to do business with others they may not want to do business with, excuse me, in celebration of values they don't share, I think is a problem. But the line there gets very, very fuzzy, and I think that's a good thing because this is very new. We're a divided country on this issue. So I get it. You don't want to bake the cake because a couple is gay. I think that's wrong. You don't want to put two men on top of the cake for them. I think that's right. I think these schools have a right to do business as they want to, but I think the country and the Supreme Court have a right to set parameters and say, look, you can do business as you want, but there will be certain cost to you, and you will lose certain federal protection or tax-exempt status. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, it'll be interesting when this becomes a bigger issue, the media coverage of it. And we saw with DOMA how pro-gay it was in terms of, it was, I think it was 5-1. It was a survey that I read in terms of pro, in terms of against with that particular ruling. And I wonder what we're going to see here when this comes to the forefront.
Yeah, you can never predict how the court's going to play out just by listening to the oral arguments. And there were some very serious arguments from the justices suggesting that they didn't necessarily want to step in and redefine the institution of marriage. But legally, it suggests a lot of people believe that they're going to move forward and make marriages from one state apply to another, and that makes a lot of sense. Politically, I really think that this is probably the best thing that could happen to Republicans. In the long term, it probably makes this issue a little bit more stickier and puts people in their camps and makes everybody more recalcitrant, but it does take the issue off the table for Republicans in 2016 to be the party against gay marriage. There is not an issue of gay marriage anymore on the table for 2016. 2017, you have the issue of taxes, you have the issue of a variety of other ironing those real thorny issues out. But the political issue is neutralized, and it's an issue that cuts against the GOP very strongly right now.
Rick Santorum is going to announce, I believe, next week that he's running for president, and he'll be one of the few candidates out there that is against gay marriage. Do you think that a candidate can survive in that sort of platform? I guess Huckabee, you could put in that category as well, very much so.
In the primary. In the primary, sure, certainly there's a place for them. Rick Santorum did better than any other candidate besides Mitt Romney in 2012. Rick Santorum won something like 11 states. He was in it to the end of the game. Mm-hmm. He's the heir apparent. So there's definitely room for a socially conservative nominee in the party.
At least in the primary, as you said.
At least in the primary, and I could see them moving forward, but that would be the end of it.
Right. Jonathan.
I think we need to start differentiating between hate and discrimination versus religious beliefs. And I think that is something that's core to this that's being completely ignored because of politics. Once again, politics has taken an issue that really shouldn't be an issue and made it into this giant crisis. And the fact is, we need to start looking at what our rights are in this country, and also what people's rights are to believe what they want to believe versus discrimination. That's totally different.
And that'll be the last word on that. Very well said. Coming up next, what qualities make a good president? You may be shocked to find what America thinks. Stay right there. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV, live from New York City. Welcome back to The Wrap. America may be divided on the legality of gay marriage, but what about a gay president? A new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll finds that more Americans feel comfortable with a presidential candidate who identifies as gay or lesbian than the one who identifies as an evangelical Christian. Respondents were given a list of qualities for potential presidential candidates and were asked to say if they would be enthusiastic, comfortable, on the fence, or very uncomfortable if a candidate had a particular quality from the list. Here's what we saw. 61% of respondents say they would be either enthusiastic about or comfortable with a gay or lesbian candidate, up about 18% since the survey was given back in 2006. Only 37% say they would have reservations or be very uncomfortable. That number down 16% from 2006. And in a surprising flip-flop since 2006, only 52% of respondents say they would be enthusiastic about or comfortable with an evangelical president, while 44% of respondents expressed some degree of hesitancy about the idea. Outspoken evangelicals, like former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, have been banning same-sex marriages one of their top priorities. During his candidacy announcement this week, Huckabee made it clear who he thinks has the final say on same-sex marriage, saying, quote, "The Supreme Court is not the supreme being, and they can't overturn the laws of nature or of nature's God. Just last month at a Family Research Council event, the governor told a room of pastors that Christian values are under attack and that we are, quote, rapidly moving towards the criminalization of Christianity. Something that, obviously, Brad, you're shaking your head in agreement with violently. And in an interview with the American Family Association back in 2014, Huckabee said he would consider leaving the Republican Party if it wouldn't fight gay marriage. Obviously, his biggest shot at becoming the GOP nominee next year is with his evangelical base. But given this new information on what Americans are looking for in their next president, would it be wise for Huckabee and other outspoken evangelicals to maybe back off the gay marriage issue? Noah Rothman.
Mike Huckabee has a unique talent for picking adversaries that are just wildly popular at the moment.
Like
His other
Beyonce.
crusade was one of the most popular artists right now working in the United States. He has a tendency to make himself out to be a victim, right? He's oppressed by just the environment around him. I think that just to take a stab at the results of this poll is it really is just the lesser of two evils that Americans are choosing from. Somebody is going to impinge on your viewpoints, and either it's going to be same-sex marriage is going to be accepted and you're going to accept it, or a whole raft of other religious and moral convictions are going to be imposed on you. And if you have to choose one or a variety of them, you would go with the one. That's just my guess as to why these results are as they are.
Brad.
Well, what's troubling, if that's true, and I think actually they're more stable, we're really seeing, if we look at the polls carefully, is that there's greater acceptance of a gay president, and there's actually greater acceptance, a little bit tick up, on the evangelicals over the course of time. I think the sad part is that there would be any resistance to evangelicals is largely fueled by the fact that what most non-evangelicals know about evangelical Christians is what they're against, not what they're for. And that's really a disservice to a rich, beautiful religious tradition. Obviously, I'm not one, and there are things I don't agree with, including a policy fighting against gay marriage as a civil issue. That said, I would think as a member of any religious community, you would want to be defined by what you stand for, not what you stand against. That's where I think they're making a mistake.
John.
I agree with you. I'm Christian. I have always said that you should give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and you should give to God what belongs to God. And we have certain inalienable rights in this country, and if we give one person the opportunity to be married, then we should give everybody that opportunity. But if a church, again, has a religious belief, they should not be made to marry other people. What kills me, again, about these polls is this was 1,000 people out of a country that has 350 million people in it. It was done by NBC and the Wall Street Journal. NBC is notoriously a huge supporter of the gay community. So I wonder where this poll was taken at, and that's going to say a lot about this whole thing. But why aren't they asking questions like, would you look for a president that has a clear vision, that has a war plan to fight an enemy, or somebody who knows how to task organize experts? None of those things were, asked in this. That's the reality. And we were talking earlier, I'm looking for somebody who really doesn't want to be president. That's, I think, the number one thing.
Explain that.
Because if somebody wants to be president, most likely they're a politician and they're the most incompetent person that you're going to have. Mm-hmm. It's the people that they don't want that limelight. They don't necessarily want to be up there and be one of these worshipped people. They are just somebody who's either angry or somebody who's very experienced, and we need them there.
Don't we have that now, though, Jonathan? A guy who doesn't like being in the limelight, and a guy who had a lot of experience.
Refuses to use selfie sticks, and that's who we have there.
That's the prerequisites right now. Well, then you must be a fan, and we're almost out of time, of a Ben Carson or a Carly Fiorina, because they're not politicians.
I am, but they want the limelight, and I have my reservations on whether or not they're action-oriented leaders.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see a guy who says, I really don't want to be president. I don't want the limelight. I just want to get things done.
Right.
I'm not even going to campaign.
Washington.
Vote for me. Right, Washington. There you go. Good point. Coming up next, it's potluck time. Brad and I go Daily Wrap. Coming right back. And welcome back to The Wrap. It's potluck time. This is the part of the show where we go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day. And if you wear a Houston Texans tie, you get to go first.
All right.
Brad Hirschfield.
That would be me. Yeah. I bring you a dish of evolution versus religion. Now, it is rare that I agree with anything that comes from the Freedom from Religion Foundation or from the Richard Dawkins Foundation. These are two organizations that professionally heap contempt upon faith and people of faith. But in the category of even a broken clock is right twice a day, they got this one right. A high school teacher in California was using a debate between the founder of the Creation Museum in Petersboro, Kentucky, Ken Ham, and Bill Nye the Science Guy, debating creationism versus evolution. And the science teacher was doing it, he said, in order to teach the controversy between the two. Now here's the thing. I believe in a creator. I pray to that creator on a regular basis. That has nothing to do with what belongs in a science class. There are no two sides to this controversy. The truth of the matter is, one is a matter of faith and one is a matter of science. Creationism is not a scientific belief. Science proceeds based on disproving things. Creationism is about proving something some of us happen to already believe. And by the us, I don't mean 7 24-hour days of creation, though there are young Earth creationists. The bottom line is creationism has no place in a science classroom. You want to watch the debate? It is great theater, and I encourage you to. You want to have teachers teach this debate in a social studies class to teach critical reasoning? I'm even okay with that. But the idea that there are two equal sides in the debate about how the world came to be is simply not true. And that should be something that people of deep faith and people of no faith at all should be able to agree about if we really hope to educate a next generation in the best possible way.
Is Bill Nye actually a science guy? What are his credentials exactly?
I think he is actually trained as a scientist, and he's a science education advocate, and I get that, and I believe in that. But he has a way of always speaking down to people of faith. And he actually undermines the value of great science by doing that. The truth is, this is not a situation where people have to think ill of each other, but because you've got often people who think they're going to win, that their side has to drive out the other side, and that's the opposite of great education. Great education invites questions. It doesn't always provide rock-solid solutions. That's how science works, and telling kids that it's something else is teaching theology in a science classroom, and as much as I believe in God, that doesn't have any place in a science classroom.
That's well said. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you. I think also scientists shouldn't be overwhelmingly preaching that this is the way, and a lot of times science is preaching. To me, when I see that debate, I understand the religious passion. What I don't understand is the scientist passion to get up there and have to debate this, because like you said, science is it's not something that should be up there. They should be back in the science room either teaching this or figuring out the way things work, not up there debating on whether or not you are right or wrong in the way that you believe. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, well, I think they're debating for two reasons. First of all, let's be clear. Bill Nye is as deeply religious about his stance against religion as Ken Ham is in defense of his position vis-a-vis creationism.
Right.
So that's why they can debate. Right? When you fight with someone, it's because you're basically like them, not unlike them.
That's
I think it's
absolutely
really
true.
important to smoke that out, because if this was being done right, we would realize, oh, right, there's a place for faith in people's lives who want it, and there's a place for science in the life of all kids getting educated, and they don't have to overlap to each have a legitimate place.
I think also that you never trust a guy who has a title that rhymes with his last name. Bill Nye the Science Guy. How do you take that seriously? Anyway, it's my turn. So, Chris Cuomo, he is an anchor on CNN's New Day. He used to be from ABC. His dad was governor of New York. His brother is now governor of New York, his late father, I should say. And Chris, I know this from experience, really likes to tweet a lot, like a 16-year-old, a drunk one does, on a constant basis. He has 4 kids. I have no idea how he has time to do a morning show, and then he's on there literally all day arguing with people. So, let's show you what he put up yesterday as far as his interpretation of the Constitution. He says hate speech is excluded from protection. Don't just say you love the Constitution, read it. It's not condescending or anything. So, a couple people saw this, and what I was amazed of was the fact that he united the left, the right, the center, basically planet Earth against him. Let's show you what Salon, which we'll show you some tweets first. Here's one. Chris Cuomo, how did you graduate law school? Let's show another. And there were plenty. Glenn Greenwald, such a painfully dumb tweet. Can you point to where this free speech exception is in the U.S. Constitution? And then there's Andrew Kaczynski of BuzzFeed. He says, hey, longtime listener, first-time caller, looking for this in this Constitution you speak of. Got a link? But the Salon headline's the best. Chris Cuomo gets Twitter spanked after boneheaded First Amendment gaffe. That is Salon. This is the most liberal, probably, magazine website out there. And even they're saying, are you an idiot? So Chris did somewhat kind of sort of explains, apologize, but not really. And sure enough, he's been on Twitter all day today again. The bottom line is, put down the Twitter if you're on TV. Yay or nay is next. Yep, it's happy time, people. It's yay or nay. Welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, first up, Patriots quarterback Tom Brady, responsible for the infamous Deflategate before this year's AFC Championship game. Was he? Well, the NFL says we think so, but we can't definitively say so. NFL just released its report looking into Deflategate, implicating Brady as part of the operation, having a general knowledge of it, saying he most likely knew that a locker room attendant and equipment assistant were purposely deflating footballs to a level beyond or below the permissible threshold. So he knew about it. More importantly, will Deflategate findings affect Tom Brady's legacy? Noah Rothman.
Yay. But I also don't care at all about Tom Brady's legacy. So I'm perfectly fine if it's tarnished. I just think a lot of people like to, we have a media environment where we like to tear down those whom we bring up. So it's time to tear down that which we have brought to the heights that Tom Brady occupies.
Brad?
Well, I think so. Probably. I can't say definitively. Of course it should. I mean, I can't believe they were as meek in their statements as they were. I'm not saying anyone should be reduced or judged entirely by any one bad act, but this is now part of his story, and it should remain a part of his story.
Jonathan.
I think cheating happens in professional sports all the time, whether it be NASCAR. There's always a way to try to figure out how you can get an advantage on the other guy when you're this closely related and as far as your abilities go. I just wish somebody would slap that hat off his head when he's in the next press conference that he wears.
I own that hat.
That drives me
I
crazy.
really do.
It's not the hat. It's just the way he wears it.
Oh, I understand. The sideway thing. I do wear it straight on. That's true. I am an A on this completely. Because with steroids, at least that gives you a competitive advantage. I don't see what competitive advantage deflating the football a little bit does. And the bottom line is, in that AFC Championship game, he threw 4 touchdowns in the second half when the balls were back to normal. And then in the Super Bowl, he led that incredible comeback against the Seahawks when everybody was looking at the footballs. So will it affect his legacy to people that hate the Patriots? Yes. Otherwise, you're looking at the second greatest quarterback of all time. First one being Bubby Brister. No, Montana still. Anyway, after losing Saturday night's $400 million boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao disclosed that he injured his rotator cuff right before the event. Well, about a month before, re-injuring it during the 4th round when Mayweather repeatedly pulled at his arm. Fans were understandably upset, including me, and now lawsuits are being filed for up to $300 million. If the suits are successful, should Pacquiao surrender his $100 million of winnings by losing after lying about being injured before the Mayweather fight? Brad Hirschfield.
Proportionally, yes. I'd figure out how reduced his capacity was, assume that's how reduced the fight was, and take away that portion. He still put up a good show. People enjoyed it. But he did ask for a shot of Toradol in his arm right before the fight. So he was sore. So it was less good fight. Pay less to him.
Let me correct you. Nobody enjoyed it. It was the most boring thing I've heard you could ever watch.
That's because you want it all back.
I think they should listen. They should either take the money back in this case because this was a big money maker, or they can keep the money, but they have to wait until he's completely medically cleared, and then they have to fight the fight again for free.
I love that idea. I've never heard that. Noah, quickly.
I like the prorate idea. Maybe take a little bit out, but yeah, I mean, these guys sacrifice so much. And the amount of remuneration that you can get for the little amount of time that you can actually be an effective boxer in the ring is all worth it. So I'm loath to take away any money from anybody who makes it as a fighter.
Okay, well said. You should give it all back, but no, I'm now in Jonathan's camp. Fight for free next time when you're healthy, so we could get beat again because no one can touch Mayweather because he's too fat. Anyway, a tourism attraction in China called the Flying Pig Show is getting rather mixed reviews, with some citing animal abuse. A group of 10 pigs with red numbers spray painted on them are then taken to the top of a bridge where they're pushed off with sticks into the water below. The pigs then have to race to the finish line. The organizer of the event says the pigs are specially trained to perform the stunt and are rewarded with food. Oh, that's nice. Should the pigs revolt and push the organizer off the bridge? Yay or nay, Noah?
Nay. This
Very
seems
good.
like a lot of fun.
good look, fun. Sick individual.
I like it.
Now this
Brad.
is wrong. This is like Animal Farm stuff. You can't do that. This is
Well, if it was
cruelty to
animal-friendly,
animals.
revolt.
I know. So he said they should revolt. I'm with them. I'm with the pigs.
I'm with the pigs.
All right, with
Knock
the
'em
pigs
off.
as well. That's some sick stuff. I can't get over that. If that happened here,
Oh,
the world would implode. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Thank you, panel. I appreciate it. Tune in to the Red Daily Wrap tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Newsmax Prime with J.D. Hayworth next.